What's going on, YouTube? Hope you're all having a great week. Now, as we all know, Apex Legends was born from the Titanfall universe, and many of the gameplay elements from Titanfall 2 have made their way into Apex Legends. But as a lifelong Titanfall 2 fan, there are things that I still think are kind of missing. And so today I'm bringing you the top 5 things that I would like to see from Titanfall 2 brought into Apex Legends going forward. As always, before we get started, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, and share this video with a friend, perhaps one who is also a huge Titanfall fan. Also, we've got some Amazon affiliate links now, so if you want any of the gear that I use to play games or make these videos, scope those links down below. It supports the channel. Now, without further ado, I'm Brad from Last Call Gaming. Let's tap into it. So obviously Apex is a slightly toned down version of Titanfall 2. And that's honestly one of the reasons the game didn't originally catch on for me. In my mind, I was like, oh, a battle royale that's based on Titanfall? Count me in. But when they dialed back a lot of the movements and the abilities, it just never caught with me. But in later seasons, the devs made it clear that they're willing to experiment with that and sort of stretch the boundaries a little to make this more than just a gun game. And so while we're having conversations about whether or not tap strafing should exist and whether or not you should be able to hold Sheila and walk around with her, I figured why not dive into what things they should bring back from Titanfall 2 that could really step up the game in Apex Legends. And so coming in at number 5, I want to talk about pilot kits. For those of you that might not have played Titanfall 2, these were individual perks that you could equip to your pilot prior to entering a match. They were things like wall hang, which allowed you to hang from the wall and aim, low profile, which silenced your jump jets and your footsteps, and fast regen, which is pretty self-explanatory to name a few. Now, obviously, these abilities sort of exist in the form of passives for some of the legends in Apex Legends already. What with Octane being able to regen health and Valkyrie being able to hover. But what I'm talking about is maybe giving each legend 3 or 4 perks to choose one from to really customize your experience based on your gameplay. For example, Octane could have a variation of fast regen to make him regen health faster, but at the expense of maybe a little bit of speed. Or Pathfinder could have the ability to wall hang with his grapple at the cost of a charge. Little things like that. I'm not talking about crazy abilities because obviously having some of this isn't exactly conducive to a battle royale, but I think it would make the experience more unique if you could really customize each legend the way you could customize Titans in Titanfall 2. For example, if you're someone who likes to drop hot and go for high kill games, perhaps you have the choice of a perk that's very offensive versus one that's very defensive. I'm not saying go crazy with it, I just think it would be a nice little addition to the game. Moving on to number 4, Satchels. Now in the Titanfall universe, Satchels were effectively sticky bombs with a remote trigger. You could toss them a short distance, stick them to walls and people, and detonate them at your leisure. They had an extremely high skill floor and were a really fun addition to the game that made for some really crazy plays. And honestly, we haven't had a new ordnance in a while in Apex Legends, and I'd really like to see these brought back. Now obviously getting blasted up close with these in Titanfall 2 was enough to kill you. But considering how ordnance in this game has been scaled back a little bit, I think it would be more than fair to be able to toss these at someone and wreck their shield for a second. Or use it to blow open doors to coordinate pushes at a certain time. Or even to lay traps for your enemies in tight hallways like on Bunker in Kings Canyon. I place these at number 4 because I'm getting a little bored with the current ordnance. While it's still really fun to get a stick with an arc star, I never really pick up thermite, and I do kind of miss the ability to cook frags. Maybe something else that Respawn should consider bringing back. So I think it's time we got a new ordnance. And Satchels were always really fun to use, really fun to learn how to get to use properly, and had great playmaking potential. And so that's why I'd like to see them come back in some capacity. Next we have number 3, a personal favorite of mine and one I think has a lot of potential for this game in a lot of different formats. I'm talking, of course, of the Pilot Gauntlet. Now outside of Titanfall 2, we know that the Pilot Gauntlet exists in the lore of Apex Legends, with Rampart being an underground gauntlet runner, and Octane blowing his legs off trying to recreate the same record-breaking stunts that made Game Sager famous. Now obviously, something like the Pilot Gauntlet would be a little bit hard to implement in Apex Legends because the movement abilities have been scaled down so much. However, I think there's a lot of potential here. For example, you could just have it as a separate game mode for people to compete against one another. You scale up the movement capabilities of the legends and let people go crazy. You could even tailor legend abilities specifically to make them gauntlet runners, and I think that would be really unique and something very different. I could also see them making this sort of an event sort of thing that comes back maybe once every season or a couple times a year, and maybe in that case they just give everybody the Titanfall 2 abilities and say, go crazy. You could also add a gauntlet as a point of interest on one of the maps, sort of like a Fight the Prowlers or Fight Night situation where you run the gauntlet at the end. Depending on your time, you get certain weapon payouts. I'm just spitballing here. There's a bunch of things you could do with it, and I think it would be a really fun addition to the game. Now, yes, you could say just go back and play Titanfall 2 if you missed the gauntlet. Thing is, Titanfall 2 is dying, and if they're gonna make the effort to write the gauntlet into the lore, they should at least bring it back for the players who've never experienced it. All I'm saying is, give me a gauntlet leaderboard. Come on, Respawn, get on on it. Up next at number 2, we have the Grenadier Weapons. Now, I'm sure there are gonna be plenty of people who disagree with me on this, but I miss Grenadier Weapons so much. Now, we know from data leaks, we know at the very least the EPG has been rendered in the game files. But I'm talking go the whole 9 yards. I'm talking the EPG, the Sidewinder, the Cold War, and my baby, the softball. Now, obviously, these could be so overpowered so easily. But the nice thing is, at least in Titanfall 2, they were relatively difficult to use, minus the EPG, debatably. They all had a weird game mechanic to them that gave them a really high skill floor. Sort of a high risk, high reward situation for most of them. But they really sped up the gameplay and gave you a lot more options, and if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you could main them. I myself spent way too much time maining the softball and had a blast doing it, no pun intended. I know we have a huge arsenal of weapons already, but the only way that this game is gonna keep getting better and better is if they add more stuff to it. Give me options. I wanna land on a grenade launcher only off drop and just see what happens. I think that'd be super, super fun. As with everything on this list though, it has to be done right or people will lose their minds. Regardless, I long for the day where I can hear the satisfying thunk of the softball on World's Edge. And that brings us comfortably to the number one thing that I want to see from Titanfall 2 implemented into Apex Legends. And as controversial as it's going to sound, bring back wall running. Now, before y'all lose your minds in the comments, oh, Brad, it's going to be broken. It'll be impossible to track. What am I going to do? Stop. Hear me out. I don't want wall running back in the same way that it was implemented in Titanfall 2. As fun as wall bouncing from side to side and going all over the place was, I know deep down in my heart that that is not conducive for a battle royale like Apex Legends. I'm talking at the very least. Give me the ability to wall run for like a second as a passive that everyone can do. Say you're in a hallway trying to juke your opponent. All I'm asking for is the ability to wall ride for a second or two, then it's on cooldown and you can slide hop away. Nothing crazy, just a little extra third dimension of movement to really spice things up. As a counter proposal, I wouldn't be upset if one of the future legends had this as their passive. Maybe for our next movement-based legend, they have the ability to wall ride, like Titanfall 2. Tuned up almost the same way, so it's just one legend. I don't know, but between wall bouncing, slide hopping, and tap strafing, I think you'd have your next best flanker. Again, this is something that would be super easy to be overpowered, so it would have to be tuned the right way. But as we've seen with the last couple of seasons, Respawn's been doing a pretty good job of bringing legends in a little bit on the strong side and then dialing them back to where they need to be. And so honestly, I don't see a reason why they couldn't make something like wall running work. Now, I put this at number 1 because this is something that I honestly truly miss from Titanfall 2. And while the movement in Apex Legends is something that separates the game from every other battle royale on the market currently, I still maintain that I want more movement capabilities. I think adding that third dimension of movement really ups the skill potential of the game and gives you more things to work for than just your aim and getting a whole bunch of kills. Not to mention, it's just really fun to watch. Now, the devs have gone on record as saying that wall running is something that they tried, but it was just too unpredictable. All I'm saying is, try harder. I want to see it. I think it would be really fun, and it would make the game just that much more competitive. So what do you guys think about these ideas? And are there any abilities from Titanfall 2 that you would like to see implemented in Apex Legends? Let me know in the comments below. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so that you know when I post more content and go live right here on YouTube every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. You can interact with me personally, and we're building a really cool community. Until that time, however, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, cheers.